Our next speaker is Fredric Lundgren. He's from IKEA. And he's going to talk to us about insights into the future. That's a very exciting topic. Do you want to come up, Fredric? Let's give him a big round of applause.
Thank you.
So I think we should all make good notes here and at least leave your session with 5 performance factors you need to know about in 2018.
Oh yeah.
I love these sort of, future sort of trend things. But before you start, Fredric, do you have any digital role models you'd like to share with us?
I think at least one of them was mentioned here before. Avinash Kaushik, who is a really great. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to hear him speak, but he writes really interesting blog posts and sends really interesting newsletters, which usually you need about an hour to get through. But they're well worth the investment in time.
I love his, I'm not sure if he's deserved the title or if it's given it to himself, but I think he calls himself a Google Analyst Evangelist. So that's a pretty cool title. So Fredric, we look forward to hearing all about the future.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, today I'm going to try and take you on a journey through time into that far-off, distant vista of the future that is 2018. And I'm going to reflect a little bit upon some of the things that we've talked about today already. And I'm going to hammer home and drive home some of the points which previous speakers have already talked about. These are 5 highly biased trends that I think that you will see more of in the year to come. So some of them you may recognize, but I hope and I think that maybe 1 or 2 will be more or less completely new to you. So, my name is Fredric. I work at a furniture retailer here in Sweden, where I have the pleasure of serving as a digital performance analyst. You may have heard about the place. We at IKEA, we have a lot of numbers. So that's mainly what I do. I ensure that we can collect all the data that we need to, and that we can also analyze it and provide all the dashboards and information that is necessary for us to make informed business decisions. And we have a lot of data. I can't remember if we're talking e-commerce, which I think a lot of people in here will be interested. I think our e-commerce, the size of our e-commerce today is about 15% or something of our total turnover and sales. I have some colleagues here today, so they will have to correct me later. And we have a total of 2.1 billion visitors to our websites globally each year, which makes for some very interesting challenges where you, as opposed to having enough data, you actually have too much data. But the things that we're going to talk about during the coming half hour is first and foremost speed and page speed and the importance thereof, not only for SEO but also for user experience. We're going to touch on that shortly. We're also going to talk about something called event streaming, which I'm not sure if how many people are familiar with event streaming? Have you heard that term before? Or complex event streaming? Or processing? Yeah. No one. Then we're also going to talk a little bit about multi-channel marketing and performance and the importance of this, and also micro moments, which we touched upon earlier this morning, and what they mean. And last but not least, data visualization, a couple of best practices for succeeding with data visualization. But first, does anybody recognize this type of instruction? Does anybody know what type of car this is? I'm actually a little bit disappointed. I think you're too few people raising your hands. This is a DeLorean, and the DeLorean is a vehicle featured in the 80s film Back to the Future. Now, how many people remember the 80s? It's okay if you were born in the 90s. I was born in '86, so I hardly remember the '80s, but I remember this film, Back to the Future, and the impact that it had on me. Now, page speed is a prerequisite for not only SEO and user experience, but also for time travel. So, for those of you who have yet to discover the perfection and the beauty of the metric system, at the critical speed of 88 miles per hour, or 141.6 kilometers per hour, what is called the flux capacitor feature on the DeLorean will activate, and thus enabling us to perform time travel. So speed is a critical component of time travel. And we know from watching the films that the let's see, I think it's stainless steel casing on the DeLorean is also, for some reason, very important to the activation of this flux capacitor thingy. Just like speed is very important to both UX and SEO. But luckily, as opposed to the theoretical physics of time travel, a little bit more research has been done into page speed and its importance than what Dr. Emmett Brown ever did into time travel. So we have Jan Mueller, who I believe has been quoted here previously today, on record as saying stuff about, let's see, we're seeing an extremely high response time for requests made to your site, at times over 2 seconds to fetch a single URL. And by that he means the response time as sent out by the server. And this has resulted in us severely limiting the number of URLs will crawl from your site. That means that if your server is not fast enough, it means that Google may actually actively try and restrict the number of times or the amount that it will recrawl or crawl your content at all. And slow loading sites frustrate users and negatively impact publishers. In our new study, The Need for Mobile Speed, we found 53% of mobile site visits are abandoned if pages take longer than 3 seconds to load. And I think, was it you, Maria, who mentioned this morning that we would prefer it to be 1 second? Yep. And sites that load in 5 seconds versus 19 seconds observed 25% higher viewability and 70% longer average sessions and 35% lower bounce rates. So I think we can all agree on that speed is important, not only from the SEO perspective, but also then from the user experience perspective. Now, this is a graph from a tool called Pingdom, a service called Pingdom, which records the performance of top 50 e-commerce websites, and this includes sites like H&M, etc., and Amazon, etc. And they have on record the time it takes to load the home page, ranging from about half second to 8.5 seconds. And you have to remember, these 50 sites are some of the most top performing in the world, probably also some of the largest sites in the world. So if we relate that to what is also the size of these sites, because size is an important factor, the amount of data that you have to download. We can see that the smallest site is actually just 0.5 megabyte. I can't remember which site it is, and the largest is upwards of 10 megabytes, which you need to download in order to be able to view it. And that means that especially in a mobile-first world, downloading 10 megabytes over the 3G, 4G, or 5G network today is not going to be a very fast process, especially if said site is not hosted using CDN, for example, or something similar. So some of the common factors that are affecting page speed today are the server response time, where it measures how long it takes for your server to respond to the request and affirm that, okay, yeah, we have this page, we can actually serve it to you. And then we have the page size. The average web page is now the size of the original Doom game. How many people play that? Now, how many hours do you guys think that you spent playing Doom? I would say a lot, more than one, right? So in an experience like Doom, which can last for several hours, is the same size as downloading what amounts to a I would say, largely non-interactive experience today on the average web page. And that also makes you think that throughout a session, if you're going through an e-commerce website where you're trying to order a t-shirt or whatever, going through a funnel of consisting of 5 to 6 steps, how many megabytes have you downloaded in total, for example? And what is the amount of waiting time that you have experienced during that process? Something that is not always observed today is the importance of tags in JavaScript when it comes to page speed. Now, JavaScript, dynamic script being served, can be implemented in several different ways. Where sometimes you will have scripts that are not compatible with your browser or device, and maybe in the worst case scenario, the page won't even load. I think actually we had a few examples of that here today. Earlier when we were seeing some sites which weren't loading. But also tags. How many people in here use a tag management tool? Yeah. And if you're not, then you really should. Now, tags being placed on your site are usually done through a tag management tool. But tags basically consists of anything that you can think of, from the Google Analytics script to other scripts to a Facebook pixel, etc., that you decide that you want to include in a tag handler. And when you go home today, I would recommend that each and every one of you takes a look at how long does it take to execute or to load each and every one of the tags that are available on your site, because they can affect the speed of your site tremendously. And I can tell you that this is a discussion, a heated discussion that we're having inside IKEA right now, which tags use and not use, purely based on the performance that we're seeing with tags. For example, Hotjar. Now everyone is going to go home and see how fast Hotjar loads on their website. So, and also redirects can also affect the page speed. The number of redirects that you're using, and of course the way that you have implemented them. If they're going in some sort of loop, for example, or if you're using a tracking-based system, for example, when you're trying to, if you're using ad form, for example, or something, when somebody clicks an ad, it's going to redirect over 1 or 2 URLs before taking you to the landing page, and that also adds to the time required to load your page into your device. Again, very important, especially when you're considering mobile devices. And then we have caching and caching settings, storing of content on your device or on a local server or server in the cloud. So throughout this presentation, because these are 5 topics which can be quite heavy, I have included a set of recommended reading, and I will distribute the presentation through Topvisible later on. But I think that one of the most easy to use tools, which also delivers some of the most important and critical information how to make your web page or your website in total become faster, is the Google PageSpeed Insights tool. And actually, if you're interested in knowing how it works, then you can actually read the rules which govern the way that this tool works online. So if you want to trim your DeLorean to reach that magic speed of 141.6 kilometers per hour, or preferably you want to trim your website and you want to continue to trim your website to the point where you're going to reach that magic speed and break down the barriers of the space-time continuum and achieve time travel, or simply generating better results and a better user experience, then I think you should really read through these rules to understand what they mean, and then you should use one or more tools to gauge the speed at which your page loads. And also remember, this can of course be different across the world. If you're using a tool that is trying to load your website from, for example, Canada, and your server is located here in Sweden, then that's going to affect the speed as well. So some of the common pain points when it comes to page speed that I feel are worth mentioning is that you can address them by, for example, leveraging the browser caching, where you can actually use different rules or have developers use different rules on how long objects should be cached. That's a hard word. Cached before expiring. That means basically that if you set a time limit, then these objects won't be updated until that time limit has expired, for example. You can also enable compression. There's something called gzip compression for all HTTP requests, and that can reduce the size of transferred responses by up to 90%. That doesn't mean maybe a whole lot in entire megabytes, but it can mean a lot in kilobytes, for example. And I think that as time goes on, right now we have a challenging situation where we see that we need to download sometimes pages which are 10 megabytes or more to our mobile devices over a slow network. I think that one of the solutions in the future will be that we will have better compression solutions, but it's also important to remember to use them. And also I would recommend optimization of your images. That's something that's been around for a long time, I would say, at this point, but it's still an underused feature, an underused opportunity. You can at times vectorize your images, which will take them from megabytes down to just kilobytes. Or you can use CSS to achieve certain effects on the website that you want. And of course, by now, most people should be hosting their websites on a CDN, at least if you're running a big site. That can also be a cost issue, though. At the very least, I would say you should host your images over CDN, Cloud Delivery Network. And you should use a synchronous script. Remember that the JavaScript that I was talking about? Now, if you're running JavaScript on your site, then for example, the scripts that we looked at earlier, that can be the effect that you're going to see, that at some point the script will break and then the site will just stop loading and then it will just stand like so. But if you're using a synchronous script, then that means that other scripts don't have to wait for this particular script to be loaded, and you can load in all of your other HTML and resources, etc., and basically, hopefully, your site won't break. Now, what is an example of an asynchronous script? Google Tag Manager, for example, if I remember correctly. What is an example of a synchronous script? The complete opposite, the thing that we want to avoid. Basically, every A/B testing tool on the market today. And also, you can improve the server response time. It should be less than 200 milliseconds. And there are dozens of factors that can affect this. But basically, like any problem, you can solve it by throwing money at it, by upgrading and improving your server. There are, of course, other ways as well. So, that's that about page speed. Now, I think that we need a little less talk and maybe a little bit more action. And we're going to talk about the next big Saurian thing called event streaming. Right. And event streaming, for reference's sake, well, what does it mean? I like to use the definitions provided by Wikipedia to enable us to have a common understanding of what, or common definition of what different terms means. And especially in this case, Wikipedia has proven an invaluable resource in order to be able to explain just what this is and how it differentiates from other techniques. Event streaming, or complex event processing, is something that has been around in other businesses, for example, business intelligence, for a long time, relatively speaking. But event processing is a method of tracking and analyzing streams of information about things that are happening, called events. An event can be basically whatever. It can be that you're visiting a web page, or you're using a kiosk, you're passing through the register at some place. What else could it be? It could be that you're sent an SMS, etc. It could be anything, in theory. It just needs a digital touch point. It just needs to be tracked in some way. So these events may be happening across different layers of your organization. Like I said, it can be sales, it can be orders, customer service calls, whatever you want it. An event may also be defined as a change of state. For example, when you have an event that is happening, and based on some prior information, a state is changing. For example, I have registered with IKEA Family, which I think that each and every one of you in here should do if you haven't already. That is a state change, for example. You are now a registered member, for example. So, what does this mean in practice again? I will show you a couple of examples. But event streaming in practice is a lightweight and dynamic real-time data collection, which basically takes every event that comes along, whether it occurs on the web or offline, as long as you're sending the data to your event stream vendor. And it takes this data, it goes into a stream, and then server-side, it takes that data and it looks at all of the rules that you have set up, which says, if some web visit is coming in, then please send it to Google Analytics, or please send it to Adobe Analytics, for example. Same thing, a transaction is being recorded somewhere in a register. Okay, send the transaction information to this CRM system connected to this IKEA Family member ID, for example. And based on that information and what happens server-side, the data is then assigned to a group or an audience, if you will, where you can apply another set of rules. So let's say, for example, that someone here has gone on to IKEA.com and you have registered with IKEA Family, and as soon as you register with IKEA Family, that data goes into the event stream, it's sent to the corresponding receivers, and it's in that state change that occurs, another rule is set up to say that, okay, when somebody signs up for IKEA Family, send a text message to their mobile number with a discount code or something similar. So this is IoT, Internet of Things data collection that we're talking about at its core. Now today we're starting to see more and more data coming not only from mobile and computers, but also from TVs. How many people have tried surfing on your smart TV at home? Yeah, fantastic experience, right? Maybe not yet, but maybe it will become one day. And also other types of devices such as gaming consoles, etc. What do you do when you have so many disparate types of data sources and you want to combine each and every one of them? Now let's say, for example, that we are visiting a website. Ayeda was talking earlier about if we have a mobile ready website. Let's say that we have two. We have one that is for desktop and we have one for mobile, right? How do we ensure that we are getting the same data from these? How do you know that the event that you're tracking on the desktop is tracked the exact same way on the mobile? Can you be certain of that? The answer is that, yeah, maybe not all the time. So, and it's the same thing then again with a TV or with a gaming console, for example. What the question arises, okay, so what constitutes a visit on the desktop compared to a TV, for example? And how long is a session, for example? How do we record the session length on the desktop compared to the TV or compared to a gaming console? Is it communicated at all in some way? By using an event stream vendor, you can take all of this information and you can apply protocols which would say that, okay, at this point, stuff should be sent to the event stream. And in the event stream, you will then use a group of rules to assign where this data should be collected to and where it should be sent to and what type of information that it contains. Don't fret, I will show you a visual example. But the main thing why I'm bringing this up here today and why I think you will see more of it in 2018 has to do with mobile devices. Because as this data is collected, you have the opportunity to do something which has the capacity to increase the performance of your site on mobile devices, well, also desktop devices naturally, by a great deal. Now, normally, when I log onto a website like Aftonbladet or whatever, it's filled with HTML crap and JavaScript crap. And my device then has to sort through all of this code and these scripts and decides which scripts it can execute, etc. And then there's a bunch of tags sending my data to double-click to Facebook or wherever. And that has the ability to really slow down my device, not only because it has to run all of these scripts, but also because it has to communicate back and forth with Aftonbladet servers somewhere. The beauty of using this event stream is that my device can purely send all of this information one way, and all of the scripts and everything else are then executed server-side in the cloud. And then the result is delivered back to me. So what I am saying here is that the cloud is running all of these scripts for my device, and that makes loading the website faster, and it also decreases the strain on my device, thus actually in theory increasing battery time even. What does it look like in real life? Okay, here's an example from a vendor called Telium that we at IKEA use. Now, I'm using, this is an event stream, this is part of an event stream, where the only thing I've done is visited a homepage on one of our country websites. So, an event is received here, a system has received the events, and then it says that a visit has been started. We have followed a couple of rules and added a couple of enrichments. What do we call them? A couple of variables that we have attached to this visit. There are a bunch of rules defining then which stream should this visit go into, which audience should it be assigned to. Is it a recurring member? Do we know that if this person has visited our websites before? Are they logged in, for example? Do they belong to a marketing group, etc.? And all of that, instead of being done on my device, is done through the cloud, which then decreases the strain on my device. So, and then it says right up top that there are a bunch of actions that are, no, not up top, third from the top. Actions without cooldown group, 4 actions triggered. And what are those actions that are then triggered by the cloud? These actions, in this very simple case, is Google Analytics data being sent to, I think, 3 separate accounts and then 1 for Adobe. And that is being handled through the cloud, which means that my device does not have to communicate directly with Google servers in this instance, through the tag manager, in order to send data to my analytics account. That is being done through the cloud. And I think that is a beautiful, smart little piece of technology which has actually huge implications. I would say that for marketing purposes today, this is still in its infancy. But I think that in 2018 you're going to see a lot more of it. And the reason why I think that is that Google said, as we saw earlier today, that leading companies, I think this was defined by Thomas this morning, are 1.5 times as likely as mainstream companies to have an integrated marketing and advertising technology stock. And that is exactly what this is, or part thereof. You can use and capture audience attributes and then assign them and send them wherever you need them. So, why will event streaming finally matter to marketing in 2018? Yeah, it will be cloud-based delivery. Any actions which can be formed, collected in the cloud means that there's less strain on the client device. It gives you control of the data collection. You can control what is tracked and where it's sent. And this is also compatible with multi-channel, which means that if you are recording stuff from your different devices, you are no longer required to obey by the protocol or the rules as set up by the people who created whatever tool that you are or software that you're using. You can apply your own rules for, okay, so when should a successful transaction be sent to my system? Or when should a visit be counted from the television? Or a visit from the desktop, for example. And also control of data integration. It decides what goes where and what activates as a result. And this is even more important when you come to think of GDPR. If you have personally sensitive data that you need to send somewhere as part of a transaction, for example, or a registration, then you can now control where and how it's being sent. We had an example, I think if it was this morning or yesterday, where we talked about sending IDs, ID numbers, to a number of systems, which would then, if we put them in the data layer, they will be readable. People can, in theory, figure them out. And we were like, we don't really want that, no. So how about we serve them up as hash information instead? Impossible to figure it out, yeah. And then in the cloud, we would have our event stream apply a rule which would desensitize. It would simply fix the hash, turn it back into normal, understandable information, and send it on to the correct vendors where we want the information to end up. And of course, as I mentioned, improved performance on mobile devices. And then real-time database interactions. Being able to set up rules which will apply in real-time interactions is a very nice feature, I think. So, and obviously this is a heavy subject, full of technology. So I have included a list of recommended reading on the topic. But let us proceed to talking a bit more about multi-channel marketing in short, and performance in an Apex, okay, the sentence is wrong. Apex marketing predator performance. So let's keep on the topic of time travel and dinosaurs just a little bit longer. Now, according to Wikipedia, the definition of multi-channel marketing is the blending of different distribution and promotional channels for the purpose of marketing. And distribution channels range from retail storefronts, a website, or a mail order catalog, etc. Basically anything is a distribution channel where you can buy stuff, in theory. So in practice, multi-channel marketing consists of a combination of different channels through which you can distribute your message or variants thereof, but it requires a strong supply chain which can support your marketing. So basically, if we're marketing through one channel, then we should also be able, hopefully, to have a logistics system which will support any orders which are received through that system. For example, this is something that we struggle with at IKEA, to be honest. At IKEA today, you can either pick up something in store, or you can order it online, or you can actually call in and order something through our support center. So, and we want to be multi-channel, and we want people to use any available channels to shop with IKEA. Now, in order to accommodate that, we need a strong system of supply chain management which will ensure that, okay, at the time people are interested in purchasing these goods, we will have adequate numbers of them in the warehouse. There will be adequate numbers available at our central location for purchasing them. So we don't have to find out one morning that, okay, we are in need of this type of furniture and it's currently unavailable in the entire country. We have to ship them from some other country, Switzerland, for example. Now, multi-channel marketing is also about media convergence. You're using different media channels to send the same message or similar messages based on different types of rules. Basically, you want to work, be able to work your prospective clients and prospective customers throughout different media channels. SAS had a very good example of this a few years ago, where basically they figured out that if they serve a banner with SAS to people flying business or economy in work, about, I think it was once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, something like that, they would retain a bigger number of frequent flyers. And also to connect back to the coordination of data sources, or the event stream, it also allows you to coordinate different data sources so they can inform one another. For example, what many of us are using today is doing a collection of digital information, which is then sent or used to inform any type of offline marketing that you're doing, where you, for example, should distribute catalogs, etc. So the benefits of multi-channel marketing are an improved customer interaction and successful management of communication across several different channels should hopefully increase customer feedback and brand impact, and also increased sales, because as you're not as reliant on timing, then people should hopefully be reached by your message regardless of time zones, etc., or at convenience, at an hour or place of convenience to your specific customer. And also, hopefully, we should get some improved customer information out of this, using analytics, applied analytics for individual channels, or collecting information from different channels. And also communications across different touch points. Or I have included some more recommended reading. Let's talk a little bit about micro moments. Micro moments is a term that I believe everyone here has heard about now. Now, micro moments occur every time a person turns to their device to look up for some type of information based on an impression or an idea that they get, maybe from watching a commercial on TV, etc. And these are intent-rich moments when people start, hopefully, their journey, or as part of their journey, to consuming something. Now, Google has identified that there are 4 basic types of micro moments. They are the I want to know moments, where you try and find out more information. I want to go moments, where you try and find out location-based information, or opening hours, etc. I want to do moments, where you want to do something practical. For example, this weekend I was trying to change the wipers on my car. Yeah, had to YouTube that one. I want to buy moments, which are pure e-commerce or commerce transaction moments then. And Google also recommends 3 ways to be quick about this, because quick is the way to best results. They recommend that we eliminate steps required to succeed in, for example, placing a transaction or fulfilling my need in finding the right information. They also recommend that we anticipate needs by using clear call to actions, for example, or analyzing prior behavior to identify what can we do that will make it easier for the user to find the information that he or she is looking for. And finally, to load like lightning and to be fast. I think you can see a trend where it comes to page speed right now. So let's skip this one. And we are going to talk a little bit about micro moments in practice, and then we have the final part of this, which is about visualization. Start tracking shit and go beyond e-commerce. Basically today, in many organizations, we are just tracking e-commerce, and we are looking at what is commonly known as macro conversions. That is an e-commerce or a lead sign up, etc. We are not looking enough at micro moments or micro conversions, which may be sign-ups for newsletters, somebody watched a video, etc. And this is also important if you're doing multi-channel marketing, to record as much as possible of different interactions with your brand, which you can then apply some type of value to. And we need to embrace customer lifetime value, and not just only measure, as someone was pointing out earlier, and not just only measure the exact transaction occurring at this moment, but also over time, how much is the consumer worth? This is what banks are great at, and everybody knows that banks have the worst margins, right? They don't make any money. And we need to organize our insights and our data in a way that other people can understand, and that we can understand them ourselves, which makes sense, which is where a tool like event streaming comes in. And finally, we also need to visualize this. So, to talk finally about data visualization, or why the digital wristwatch was a smash hit. I was trying to teach my kid the clock the other day, and I took out an old analog clock, and I held it up in front of him, and I went with the Roman numbers, you know, and this is 1, this is 2, etc. And that was impossible to explain. But the digital wristwatch, the old 80s one, which was actually pretty crude compared to the semi-luxury one that I managed to snag at home, was very much easier to understand for him, even if he can only count to 10. So data visualization is the presentation of data in a pictorial or graphical format and enables decision makers to see analytics presented visually so they can grasp difficult concepts or identify new patterns. And these are some of the visual analytics tools that are available in the market today. This is from Google Data Studio. Anybody recognize this? Yeah. And the basis for all of this data is basically Excel sheets being used then to visualize something so that we can better understand the point that is trying to be made with numbers. This is from Clipfolio. Anybody use Clipfolio? Also a fantastic tool. And this one here is from Microsoft Power BI. Anyone tried that one? Yeah. What these tools all have in common when it comes to visualization is that this is a process which takes a lot of time today. So basically every visualization has to be defined and set up manually using manual definitions of data. If you've ever tried doing complex graphs in Excel, that's basically what you have to do every time you want to make a data visualization. It may be that this will change in the future, that the amount of time required will decrease, hopefully by a huge amount, as these tools get smarter and better at predicting what type of graph you are or type of visualization you want to present. And also, we want more and more sources to go into the data visualizations that we make. I think the one from Google or each and every one of these uses huge amounts of disparate data, not only web visitation data, but also for, let's see, lead data, for example, stuff which could only be captured by a CRM, and then you want that to go into some place where you can use it to create a visualization. And also, finally, we want to know what to do next. So we want the data which goes into visualizations in the future to be able to inform us with recommendations of what we should do next. And if you look at Google Analytics today, I think this is one of the steps that they've taken. You are going to see, logging into your analytics accounts, I think most of us today, if not everyone, should see recommendations of what you could do or what you should take notice of that you can affect with your own within your own numbers. And also, it's always very important to remember the FAQ. Not everyone will be able to understand the data you're presenting, so an FAQ to resolve some of the common questions should almost be mandatory when making data visualizations. Now, I think I've used up my time, right? Yeah. So I'm going to say thank you for listening, and hope you have a nice day.
Thank you, Fredric. So have we learned a lot of new insights for the future here? A few nods, so that's good. Any questions for Fredric? There is a question.
Yeah.
Wait, let me just give you the mic so we can hear you.
The event streaming tool that you showed, is it an internal tool at IKEA, or is it something that anyone can get hold of?
No, this is from a vendor called Telium. So in the presentation, I will send out some recommended reading notes and links for where most of these vendors and tools can be found that I've mentioned.
Great, thank you.